ASUS Zephyrus G14 is one of the lightest, most portable 14-inch gaming laptops. It's got epic battery life, a beautiful OLED display, and more power than ever this year with the latest CPU and GPU options. But as great as the G14 is this year, it's got some pretty big compromises that you need to know about before buying. This year's G14 is available in Platinum White or Eclipse Grey like I've got here. Build quality feels great. This is definitely a premium laptop. It's got a CNC aluminum chassis, so all metal, and there's hardly any flex to the keyboard, and there's less flex to the lid compared to most others. There's a groove along the front, making it very easy to open the lid, and it goes back a standard amount. I didn't notice any problems with the hinges, even when pushing the screen back too far and ripping the lid open way too fast. But I did notice the screen would wobble slightly when typing hard, but it's only minor. The G14 comes in two different sizes. The bigger 5070 Ti and 5080 version I've got is 2mm thicker compared to the 5070 and below model, but even this bigger one still feels extremely portable. The thicker version of the laptop by itself weighs in at almost 1.6 kilos or 3.5 pounds, increasing to just over 2 kilos or 4.7 pounds with the 200-watt charger included. It's only slightly heavier compared to last year's G14, and last year's model is the same size as this year's 5070 and below models. Either way, it's one of the lightest gaming laptops we've ever tested, and lighter than most other 14-inch options. This year's G14 has a slightly bigger 200-watt charger compared to last gen, and that goes for the lower spec versions too. But again, it's still on the lighter side compared to most others. Along with the 5070 Ti graphics, my configuration has AMD's Ryzen 9 370 processor, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 14-inch OLED screen. But there are a lot of different options available with the link below. And if it has a good sale, we'll list it on our gaminglaptop.deals website so you can save money. The chiclet keyboard has one zone of RGB backlighting, and all zones and secondary functions get lit up. Key brightness can be adjusted between 3 levels or turned off with the F2 and F3 shortcuts, while the F4 Aura key can be used to change between the limited number of effects. You can customize the 4 effects a bit in the lighting tab of ASUS's Armoury Crate software, which is the control panel for the laptop. Just like last gen, there's also the light bar on the lid, which they call slash lighting, and there are some customizations you can make through the software, though not as many as there's only so much you can do with a strip of white lights. But you can turn it off if you'd prefer a stealthier look. The keyboard has 1.7mm of key travel and feels nice to type with. I just wish the tiny arrow keys were bigger. The glass touchpad is fairly big, but doesn't get in the way. It feels extremely smooth and accurate to click with, but I don't like how hard it is to click closer to the top. There are front-facing speakers on either side of the keyboard, and some underneath towards the front on the left and right sides. I thought they sounded great, just like last gen. Way better compared to most other laptops, as they're clear, have some nice bass, and there's almost no wrist rest vibration. But the Latencymon results weren't great in our 5-minute idle test. The G14 plays this sound by default on boot. Fortunately, you can disable it in the Armoury Crate software or BIOS. Port selection is decent for a 14-inch gaming laptop. There's no Ethernet, but I like that we've got fast Type-A and Type-C connectivity on either side, especially as either Type-C port can be used to charge. The display outputs offer a fair mix for connecting to discrete or integrated graphics. Connecting to the DGPU gives better performance in games and VR, but connecting to the iGPU for lighter tasks means quieter fans. Getting inside requires removing 11 TR6 screws of 3 different lengths, so keep track of them. 2 of them at the back are covered by rubber covers for some reason, but they're easy to pull off. And the front screw on the right corner doesn't come out of the panel and helps lift it up for opening. I still needed pry tools to get inside, but it was very easy to open. I'll leave a link to these tools I use below. Once inside, we've got the battery down the front, single M.2 storage slot just above on the left, and Wi-Fi 7 card on the right. Wi-Fi performance was in line with other laptops with the same MediaTek card, but I suspect you could probably upgrade to faster Intel Wi-Fi for about $20. Speeds from the installed 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD were decent, and the MicroSD card slot was fast, basically maxing out my V90 card. The card clicks in and sits the full way into the laptop, so no chance of bumping it, but you'll need fingernails to get it in and out. Don't get me wrong, upgradable Wi-Fi is nice, but I feel like they might have been able to fit a second storage slot instead and gone with soldered Wi-Fi, which I think would have been more useful for most people, because right now, if you want more SSD space, you'd either have to clone the existing drive or reinstall Windows, both of which are much more of a headache compared to just having a second M.2 storage slot. RAM is soldered to the board and can never be upgraded, but they do offer it with up to 64 gigs, so at least there are options if you're after more. And a benefit of onboard memory also means faster speeds. The upgrade score is on the lower side, and it's one of the least upgradable 14-inch laptops tested, same as last gen, but at least the PCIe Gen 4 M.2 slot can fit a drive with chips on both sides. The G14 is powered by a 4-cell 73Wh battery. Panel power saver is enabled by default, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate to 60Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. This is why the screen flashes black, and it goes back to 120Hz when you plug back in. You can enable battery care mode through the ASUS software to limit the maximum charge level to 80%, which helps improve the longevity of the battery. Or you could also enable eco mode through Armoury Crate, which disables the NVIDIA graphics and may help improve battery life if you don't need the power-hungry NVIDIA GPU. Battery life was excellent, but slightly behind last year's G14, which had the same sized battery. The G14 still offers one of the best runtimes we've ever measured, especially when compared to other 14-inch laptops, which are limited to smaller battery sizes. It only lost 10% of its battery charge while asleep for 24 hours. But this isn't a fair comparison with the other laptops, as it depends on the size of the laptop's battery. Here's how much battery power was lost on average per hour, which is a fair comparison, and it had the slowest battery drain rate we've measured so far. An excellent result. Let's check out thermals next. The CPU and GPU are covered by a standard cooler with heat pipes shared between them, and with Thermal Grizzly liquid metal on the CPU. This is the cooler the 5080 and 5070 Ti models have, while the 5070 and below models have a third fan, but less metal. Air comes into the fans through the keyboard and through the holes on the bottom panel, and only gets exhausted out of the back, so no hot air blowing on your mouse hand. ASUS's Armoury Crate software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, performance, turbo, and manual. Both turbo and manual modes apply this overclock to the GPU, but only manual mode lets you customize it. Manual mode also lets you customize CPU and GPU power limits, temperature limits, and gives you some control over the fan curves. The internal temperatures are fine at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. There's not much difference in temperatures between silent, performance, or turbo modes, as the fans get louder to compensate for the higher power in the higher modes. Running manual mode with the fans on the default settings results in thermal throttling on both the CPU and GPU, but if we instead max out the fans, temperatures lower quite a bit, so you could definitely find a sweet spot in between these. Running with the lid closed was 5 to 6 degrees Celsius warmer, so not enough to be an issue in a heavy workload if you want to dock the laptop, and using a basic metal laptop stand was able to lower temps a few degrees extra. The cooling pad I test with, linked below, didn't really help unless we max it out, but as you'll hear soon, that's way too loud. The pad comes with extra foam for 14-inch laptops, and I used it and didn't feel any air blowing out around the sides, so it had a seal, but maybe better luck with a different pad. The RTX 5070 Ti laptop GPU was able to run at 105 watts with the CPU under load at the same time. The NVIDIA control panel says it can run up to 120 watts with dynamic boost, so this is not a full-powered 5070 Ti, as they max out at 140 watts. But this one isn't too far behind, considering it's in a smaller 14-inch laptop. The processor doesn't get a whole lot of power, and I think it makes sense that ASUS prioritizes the GPU given the 2880 by 1800 screen resolution. The CPU is pretty much locked in at 2.6 GHz over all cores, with manual mode and the fan set to auto being a weird exception because the CPU got extra power there. I suspect because the GPU was thermal throttling, so it allowed the processor to use some instead. Here's how an actual game performs with the different performance modes in use. I've got the native results in purple and DLSS upscaling on balanced in red to boost performance. Running with a Type-C charger was about the same as silent mode with a bigger 200 watt charger, and there's not too much of a performance difference between manual and turbo modes. The CPU can use more power in a CPU-only workload like Cinebench, where the GPU is idle. This time, the performance with the Type-C charger basically matched the bigger 200 watt charger. However, it lost about 10% of its battery charge during one of the 10-minute multi-core tests. So the 100 watt Type-C charger isn't sustainable under heavy load, at least in the highest manual mode. It performed similarly to other Ryzen 9 370 processors we've tested, only a little behind the bigger Razer Blade 16, but surprisingly ahead of the bigger Zephyrus G16 from last year. Compared to last year's G14 with the older Zen 4 processor, the 2025 model with Zen 5 reaches a 15% higher single-core score and 38% higher multi-core score. A nice improvement, but it's worth noting that the G14 is also sold with Ryzen 200 series processors, which are based on last-gen Zen 4 and would perform similarly to the 8945HS. Performance doesn't lower too much when we unplug the charger and run on battery power, and it's now ahead of those other laptops with the same processor while also performing 41% better in multi-core compared to last gen. As for keyboard temps, most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle, and the G14 was a little above this, but it still felt cool. It gets warmer with the stress tests and feels uncomfortably warm in the middle of the keyboard. It's similar in performance mode. The rest feels a little warm, but the WASD area is cold, as the fans pull air in through the keyboard. Turbo mode feels pretty much the same. The fans are running louder to compensate for the higher power limits and extra heat that generates. It only gets noticeably cooler if we max the fans out in manual mode, though of course this is much louder too, and this probably isn't needed while gaming in most cases, as you won't be resting on the middle. The keyboard hotspot was on the warmer side when compared to most other laptops, but if we're being real, that was in between keys where you're not touching anyway. Still, the middle can feel uncomfortable under heavy load, and it's a fair bit warmer compared to last gen, though that one was lower spec too. Let's listen to the fans. The fans were mostly off when idling in silent mode, but they turned on from time to time, though were still quiet. Fan noise wasn't too bad in turbo mode, but to actually lower temperatures significantly by manually maxing the fans out was louder. This year's G14 is a little louder than last year's, though that one we tested last year had less power-hungry parts inside. Honestly, considering how small the performance gap is between manual and turbo modes, you can absolutely run games fine in turbo mode and have a quieter system, or even performance mode if you hate fair noise, which still does quite well comparatively. Alright, screen next. The G14 has an OLED screen with a resolution higher than most other 16x10 panels, so it'll need more GPU power to run games at its native resolution, despite being a smaller screen. The screen looks good, and we get the usual benefits from OLED, including excellent color gamut, perfect contrast, and no backlight bleed. But there's a bug with the screen brightness. Basically, if we turn Optimus off with Advanced Optimus, the screen gets much brighter, as per the green and blue lines. But ASUS have confirmed this is a bug and they're looking into it, so don't expect 500 plus nits. Technically, ASUS do advertise the panel at 500 nits, but that's for peak brightness rather than sustained. And they confirmed the sustained values we see with Optimus on around 400 nits is what's expected. It's a fairly average result for an OLED panel, and based on the panel model, it's the same one found in last year's G14. OLED panels can suffer from burn-in long term, but ASUS have a number of OLED care options in the Armory Crate software to help reduce the risk. And this includes pixel shift, which moves displayed pixels slightly. PWM flickering is present, which can give some people a headache after long use, but ASUS have an option to help lower flicker at lower brightness levels to reduce the effects. Otherwise, the glossy screen is something to be aware of, as it's reflective and can be annoying if you're working in a bright environment. But I did find it less reflective compared to other OLED laptops. Screen response time is excellent, with all transitions occurring in less than a millisecond. OLED panels are just super fast, with not much difference between them, and they're significantly faster compared to any other panel type. Despite having a faster CPU and GPU, this year's G14 wasn't much faster in the total system latency test. This is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire shows up on screen in Counter-Strike 2. It's not a bad result, and faster compared to other 14-inch models I've tested. The G14 has Advanced Optimus, allowing you to automatically get better FPS in games without a reboot. It's also got the classic muck switch, but that needs a reboot, and considering it doesn't change which GPU the ports connect to, there's no real point using it. G-Sync is available with Optimus off, and FreeSync is available from the integrated graphics when Optimus is on, so no screen tearing however you play. There's a 1080p camera above the screen in the middle, and it has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. And this is how it sounds while typing on the keyboard. Alright, let's find out how well ASUS's G14 with RTX 5070 Ti graphics does in games. We've tested it with these settings. Cyberpunk 2077 was still running well at 1080p ultra settings at over 100 FPS, though it is the worst result from an RTX 5070 Ti laptop so far. Granted, it is also the smallest one too. At 1440p, the G14 is a bit closer to ASUS's larger Helios Neo 16S, but the thicker 5070 Ti machines are still around 8% faster. Still, this is quite impressive from a 14-inch machine. Compromises are to be expected in performance when there's less space available. The G14 was the lowest 5070 Ti result in Alan Wake 2 as well, with the bigger Helios Neo 16S only 3% ahead in average FPS, but best case, Lenovo's Legion Pro 5i was 23% faster. So we've got quite a range of performance from laptops with the same GPU inside. The game still runs well at 1440p high settings, which is the highest setting preset before enabling ray tracing, and you could absolutely boost performance further with some DLSS upscaling. Black Myth Wukong was near 80 FPS at 1080p high settings, and it's not far from 60 FPS at 1440p. This game is not VRAM limited, but the GPU difference is enough to put the G14 14% ahead of the best 5070. Performance with ray tracing on and upscaling enabled was decent, with 1440p running at around 60 FPS or above. Ray tracing is more intensive, but combining DLSS with it still often results in higher FPS compared to not using RT or DLSS. And of course, you could skip tracing those rays if you just want more FPS with DLSS. I think it's great that ASUS are giving us the option of RTX 5070 Ti or RTX 5080 laptop GPUs. Yeah, they're quite expensive, but at least you've got the option of getting more VRAM if that's something you want. Because as I recently showed, 8 gigs of VRAM doesn't cut it in many modern games at higher resolutions like this. And I believe all other 14-inch gaming laptops max out with RTX 5070 graphics, so just 8 gigs of VRAM. And this difference will put the G14 ahead of others for those with a bigger budget. Here are the 3D Mark results. Content creator performance is alright, but the smaller size is definitely the reason it's behind other bigger laptops. DaVinci Resolve in particular doesn't seem to like these new Ryzen chips, given the next closest result is the bigger Blade 16 with 5090. The BIOS looks nice, but just like other ASUS gaming laptops, there's not actually much you can customize through here. Linux support was great overall, but the Aura key for changing the lighting effect didn't work, and volume stayed the same regardless of volume level set. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and to see if there are any current sales. Because if the G14 does have a good sale, we'll add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the best sales. So make sure that you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. We actually found some record low prices for the deal site while working on this video, with the 5060 model with last gen processor going for $1,350 US, while the 5070 Ti model I've covered in this video is available for $2,000. Without sales, the 5070 model is currently $2,100, so that doesn't make sense compared to the 5070 Ti on sale, while the top-end 5080 model is significantly more expensive. Those sale prices honestly aren't too bad, but is the G14 even worth buying? Let's summarize the good and the bad to find out. Starting with the good, this is a premium gaming laptop. The G14 CNC aluminum chassis feels great. It's very portable, one of the lightest 14-inch gaming laptops we've tested. The OLED screen looks great, the speakers sound amazing for a gaming laptop, battery life is among the best we've tested, and while it's not cheap with higher-end GPUs, at least you've got the option of GPUs with more VRAM if you want it. As for the bad, smaller laptop means upgrades are limited to one M.2 slot and soldered RAM, though at least you can configure the RAM up to 64 gigs. The BIOS doesn't offer much customization, and while gaming performance is great for its size, larger laptops with the same specs will perform better in games. The keyboard can get hot in the middle during heavy load, but the areas you touch while gaming are cooler. And speaking of the keyboard, how do we still not get perky RGB lighting from a premium laptop? The fans can run very loud when maxed out, but the lower performance modes give you good flexibility without much performance loss. Type-C charge works okay for light use, but under heavy load, the battery will start to drain. Bottom line, the Zephyrus G14 delivers a great mix of portability, performance, build quality, and battery life that you simply won't find in most other gaming laptops. It's not without its compromises, but I don't think there are any major deal breakers, and most of the negatives can be worked around. I can easily recommend the Zephyrus G14, and right now it's the best portable gaming laptop we've tested so far in 2025. But we've also got Razer's new Blade 14 here, and ASUS Triton 14 should be arriving soon, so get subscribed for more 14-inch gaming laptop reviews. Though as mentioned, those alternatives will max out with RTX 5070 graphics, while the G14 has the option of that 5070 Ti and even 5080 for more GPU power and more VRAM. If you'd rather have something that's a bit bigger but still thin and portable, then check out ASUS Helios Neo 16S next. They've slimmed it down this year, given it an OLED screen, and it goes up to RTX 5070 Ti graphics. I'll see you in that one next.